California gas prices have exploded past $5.39 per gallon, making it the most expensive state in the nation by a crushing margin of nearly $2 above the national average. If you drive in California, this isn't just about war in the Middle East, it's about a perfect storm that's been brewing for years. The numbers tell a brutal story. According to ALA and Gas Buddy data, drivers in Los Angeles County are paying $5.38 per gallon, while Orange County isn't far behind at $5.34. Compare that to the national average of $3.60, and you're looking at California drivers paying 50% more just to fill their tanks. But here's what makes this crisis particularly devastating. California gas prices have jumped 86 cents in just 1 month. That's not gradual inflation, that's economic whiplash. To understand how we got here, we need to look beyond just the crude oil prices. California drivers face a unique burden. The state gas tax of 68 cents per gallon plus federal taxes, combined with California's low-carbon fuel standard that adds approximately 20 cents per gallon to meet environmental requirements. Then there's the war factor. Let's rewind to February 28th, 2026. That's when Israel and the United States launched surprise airstrikes across Iran, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and triggering a conflict that would reshape global energy markets. Within days, Iranian forces declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, effectively choking off nearly 20 million barrels per day of crude oil that normally flows through the world's most critical energy choke point. The International Energy Agency called it the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Think about that for a moment. Larger than the 1973 oil embargo, larger than the Iranian Revolution, larger than the Gulf War. West Texas intermediate crude oil prices rocketed from around $70 per barrel to over $90 in a matter of days, while Brent crude, the global benchmark, pushed past $100 for the first time in nearly 4 years. But here's where California's story becomes uniquely painful. While every state felt the shock of global oil prices, California got hit with a double punch that most Americans can't even imagine. The first punch came from the war itself. President Trump, defending the military action on his Truth Social platform, dismissed the price increases as a very small price to pay and promised prices would drop once the Iran mission concluded. Easy words from someone who doesn't commute in California traffic. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced that American submarines had sunk Iranian warships in the Indian Ocean, while Iranian missiles targeted US bases across the Middle East. The scale of this conflict dwarfed anything we'd seen since Iraq, and energy markets responded accordingly. The second punch was entirely self-inflicted and had been building for years. California doesn't just buy gasoline like other states. It requires a special eco-friendly blend called CARBOB that can only be manufactured by properly equipped refineries. Plus, the state switches to an even more expensive summer blend gasoline each spring, adding another layer of seasonal cost. It's like needing a specific type of key that only a few locksmiths can make. And California had just lost 2 of its most important locksmiths. In October 2025, Phillips 66 shut down its Los Angeles refinery permanently. Then Valero announced it would close its Benicia facility by April 2026. These weren't temporary shutdowns or maintenance issues. These were permanent closures that eliminated a significant chunk of California's refining capacity right when the state needed it most. Patrick DeHaan from Gas Buddy puts it bluntly. California has created a captive market for itself. The state can't easily import gasoline from other states because of its unique specifications. A few refineries in India and South Korea can meet these requirements, but shipping fuel across the Pacific Ocean while a war rages in the Middle East isn't exactly a reliable backup plan. The timeline of this crisis reads like a perfect storm scenario. Throughout late 2025, massive protests had erupted across Iran as economic collapse and rising prices triggered the largest demonstrations since the 1979 revolution. By January 2026, President Trump was declaring that a massive armada was heading to Iran. Indirect nuclear negotiations in Oman showed promise, with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stating that a historic agreement was within reach just 3 days before the bombing began. Then everything exploded, literally. Within hours of the first airstrikes, Iranian forces began attacking ships attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz. Major shipping companies like Maersk, CMA-CGM, and Hapag-Lloyd suspended all transits through the strait and related routes. The flow of oil through this critical choke point dropped to what officials described as a trickle. For California drivers, the impact was immediate and merciless. Gas prices that had been averaging $4.65 per gallon jumped to $5.20 overnight, a 55-cent spike in a single day. As Patrick DeHaan noted, the last time the national average made a similar weekly jump was back in March of 2022, during the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But unlike 2022, California had fewer options. The Phillips 66 refinery that might have ramped up production was already shuttered. The Valero facility was counting down its final weeks. The remaining refineries, Chevron and Marathon facilities scattered across the state, were running at maximum capacity but couldn't fill the gap. Jamie Court, president of Consumer Watchdog, points to another frustrating reality. These are the moments we need them, because when the price of a commodity goes through the roof, whether it's crude oil or refined gasoline, that's when companies make outrageous profits. California had actually passed legislation in 2022, giving regulators the power to cap refinery profits and penalize oil companies for price gouging. The law sits on the books, unused. Last year, the California Energy Commission voted to delay implementing these rules for 5 years. So while drivers watch prices climb toward the state's all-time record of $6.44 per gallon, set in June 2022, the tools to fight price gouging remain locked away in bureaucratic limbo. The refinery closures weren't just about California regulations, despite what oil companies claim. U.S. Energy Information Administration data shows that global market forces were already pushing refineries toward closure. Market analyst Abhi Rajendran from Energy Intelligence notes that Wood Mackenzie estimates nearly a quarter of all oil refineries worldwide will go dormant by 2035. California just happened to be at the front of this trend when war broke out. The human cost of this crisis extends far beyond inconvenience. USC economist Michael Mish predicts that California gas prices could reach $7.35 to $8.43 per gallon by the end of 2026, a potential 75% increase from 2025 levels. For working families already struggling with inflation, this represents a devastating blow to household budgets. The International Energy Agency's emergency release of 400 million barrels from strategic reserves, a record amount, was described as merely a stopgap measure. The agency acknowledged that with nearly 20 million barrels per day of oil exports disrupted and limited ways to bypass the Strait of Hormuz, both producers and consumers worldwide are feeling unprecedented strain. Meanwhile, the war continues to escalate. President Trump recently announced that U.S. forces had totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. At least 13 American service members have been killed, with U.S. spending reaching $16.05 billion in just the first 12 days of conflict. Vice President J.D. Vance, who as a senator had argued against war with Iran as a huge distraction of resources, has notably distanced himself from the military action. Iran has allowed only Chinese vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, citing China's supportive stance since the conflict began. This adds another layer of complexity to global supply chains already strained by years of disruption. For California drivers, the immediate future looks grim. Market analysts warn that if geopolitical tensions don't ease soon, averages could climb towards $6 per gallon before summer driving season begins. The state that pioneered environmental regulations and clean air standards now finds itself trapped by its own good intentions, unable to access outside fuel supplies when crisis strikes. The irony is stark. California created the cleanest burning gasoline in America, but that achievement has become an economic prison. As one energy expert noted, it insulates us in the sense that we're not going to have a hard time finding supply, but the prices are global, so prices go up anyway. This is what happens when good intentions meet geopolitical reality, when environmental goals collide with market forces, and when a state's energy independence becomes energy isolation. California drivers aren't just paying for war in Iran. They're paying the price for decades of policy decisions that left them uniquely vulnerable when global crisis struck.